This is a modern, well-constructed but narrow concrete road that makes use of part of the original historic Oudekloof Pass route and then swings away to the south to climb to the very top of the peak, where an array of telecom and other microwave towers bristle at the summit. This is an out-and-back route requiring drivers to descend along the same route to return to the Oudekloof farmstead. It is generally not a publicly accessible road, with one or two exceptions. We obtained special permission to film the route, which provides magnificent and varying scenery, but it is seriously steep, and it's as well that it is concreted. Most of the pass has a gradient between 1 in 4 and 1 in 5, making it amongst the steepest passes in South Africa. The historic Oudekloof farmstead today offers a variety of accommodation options. We found it best to drive the pass in first gear high range. Hundreds of stormwater channels have been built into the road, which inadvertently act as speed bumps, resulting in a fairly low speed having to be maintained. The road has been professionally constructed on a bed of rocks and appears to be recently built. It is possible, if you are paying guests at the Oudekloof farm, that you might be able to get permission to drive or walk the route. It's also obviously accessible to maintenance vehicles servicing the towers at the summit. After 1 kilometer, the road kinks to the left through a gully, then arrives at a natural neck in the mountain. At this point, a jeep track leads off to the right and starts descending down the western side of the Oudekloof mountain. This is where the original Oudekloof Pass departs the concrete road and ends down in the valley at Saron in the west. The new road turns sharply into the south-southwest at this point and begins a long and steep climb, offering expansive views over the Tulbagh Valley and surrounding areas. This section is 850 meters long and ends with a 100-degree right-hand turn to offer a new view of peaks and fynbos. After this bend, the road quickly leads into the only hairpin of 170 degrees, and the concentration on driving barely allows one to enjoy the marvelous scenery. Shortly after the hairpin bend, the concrete gives way to gravel for the final 120 meters to the summit, where a collection of masts and towers dominate the mountain top. A short footpath of 90 meters leads to a small kopje where one can enjoy 360-degree views over the Oudekloof Mountains, Saron and Gouda to the west. To the south, the R46 can be seen entering the Oudekloof Pass, and several high peaks obscure the views to the south-southeast, but the size and scope of the beautiful Tulbagh Valley, with its myriad orchards and vineyards, is the coup de grace. The western descent of the original Oudekloof Pass can be clearly seen heading along the mountainside, gently descending towards Saron. Once you've had your fill of the view, it's time to tackle the descent. Use the same gear you used for the ascent, maximizing the use of engine compression to keep your speed down and relieve pressure on the braking system. This would not be a good road to experience brake failure. The Rhodesand passes have a long and illustrious history. Going back to Jan van Riebeeck's tenure, the big mountain range that stretched from the east at Gordons Bay all the way to the north presented an enormous barrier to trade with inhabitants in the interior. Only 3 known passes were used back then, which was the Ganto Pass in the south, the Pikkenierskloof Pass some 170 kilometers to the north, and the Rhodesand Pass, which was about midway between the two. In the period 1652 to the mid-1800s, the Tulbagh Valley was known as the Rhodesand Valley. Nothing was done by the VOC to develop this pass for almost 40 years, but when Willem Adriaan van der Stel took over as governor of the Cape in 1699, he opened the fertile Rhodesand Valley to farming and named it Land van Waveren, after a place in Holland. The locals didn't much like the new name and continued referring to it as Rhodesand, so named after the red sandstone cliffs in the northwestern corner of the valley. A rudimentary pass was developed over a low neck in the Oudekloof mountain some 4 kilometers north of Gouda, and it was named the Rhodesand Pass. After the easier Oudekloof Pass was built along the river, This pass became known as the Oudekloof Pass, and later this was shortened to the Oudekloof Pass. It is no wonder that goods and ox wagons had to be dismantled and carried piece by piece down this incredibly steep mountainside.